For our scripture reading today, we'll be reading from Matthew 25, verses 14 and 15. Matthew 25, verses 14 and 15. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. And then he went on his journey.
I hate being late when we go to see a movie. Whenever we get some time to go see a movie, I don't know if you like to just show up at the last second and sit down, but I like to show up. I'd rather much show up like 20 minutes early and kill time. And people feel differently about that. You probably can divide people according to their preferences there. Partly because I want to see the previews, but mostly I don't want to miss anything. I went with some friends years ago to a movie, and we got the time wrong, and I still haven't seen the first 20 minutes of that movie. So I had no idea what was going on. I had not gotten the first part. And so I was thinking about this because we're going to look at a parable, and you'll notice that we're kind of walking in 20 minutes late. If you start with Matthew 25:14, you can tell from the very first part, what we just read. 25:14 says, "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey." If you walked up to some people who were in the middle of a conversation, one of them turned to you and said, it's just like when you go camping. You would say that you've walked into the middle of the conversation. The only logical question would be for you to say, wait, what's just like going camping? I don't understand the context. And here Jesus is saying, it's just like a man about to go on a journey. And the logical question here would be, wait, what is just like a man about to go on a journey? And so you have to go back a little ways. In fact, to go to the beginning of the conversation, you have to go clear back to Matthew 24:1. And I'll skim just a little bit, but just to give us a little bit of a feel for what was going on during this dialogue between Jesus and his followers. Matthew 24:1, we see that he's sitting on the Mount of Olives. And Jesus had been talking about how there's a limited amount of time. This is not going to go on forever. This will come to an end. There is a limited amount of time. And the disciples approach him, and they essentially say, well, how much time is on the clock? What are we talking about? A little bit of time? A lot of time? What? And he gives them a very thorough answer, but the gist is that he says there's not a lot of time. The trick is, this is what he's basically telling them, you just need to be ready. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to give you a countdown clock or anything like that. Matthew 24:33, you'll notice the phrase, right at the door. Matthew 24:42, be on the alert. And then he talks about this parable in Matthew 25 as well, about the 10 virgins, and there's 2 groups that are getting ready to go into this wedding. And obviously there's a group that's ready and a group that's not. So he's essentially telling them, as far as how much time you have left, just be ready. Do as much as you can right now. That's the conversation that's going on. And that's when he says, well, think of it this way. There's this guy who's leaving town. And then he tells him this parable in Matthew 25:14. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Immediately, the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner, the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who had received the 1 talent went away and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I've gained 5 more talents. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant, good and faithful slave. You were faithful in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things, and enter into the joy of your master. Also the one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, well done, Good and faithful slave. You are faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one also who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you had to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him, and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And it's easy to glance at this parable and say, oh yeah, I need to just be ready to give back to God. And that's true. But there's so much more going on here. And it took me a long time to get past the word talent. Thinking, oh yeah, your skills, you're supposed to use your talent. There's a lot more going on here. This is not just about money management, and it's not just about your abilities. More than anything, keep in mind the context, it's about making the most of your opportunity. Remember, it's about limited time. So we're told the master was gone for a while, and a long journey back then wasn't a weekend or anything like that. You had to pack up possibly maybe a year or even more. It says that he was gone a long time, so he's gone a while. Remember, that's the whole idea is his imminent return. That's why Jesus is telling this parable. And while he's gone, there's a lot of things to take care of. When I was house sitting, I don't know if you've ever done that before, took care of pets and plants and the mail. That's about it. This is much bigger than that. This is a huge responsibility, managing the property and the business, and he calls in his 3 servants. And just in case you're wondering, that word slave or servant, it's doulos, and it's a very interesting word. It's the best kind of position to be in. It's a slave by choice. Because the master takes care of you. It's a job you want. It's a position you want to be in. Everything they wore or ate or used belonged to their master. And he calls them, and it says he entrusted his possessions to them. It says, you guys are in charge. Everything that belongs to him was put in their hands. He's trusting them with a lot of money. Now, like I say, talent, I automatically think, okay, everybody has certain talents. And again, it's part of it, but there's so much more. It was actually a unit of weight, about 75 pounds. That's the best I could do. That's about a talent right there. It's about 75 pounds. That's the stack of books there. Whether it was gold or silver, some translations imply one or the other, it's a lot of money. So silver was more common, but it could have been gold, depending on the translation. 75 pounds of money. That's what we're talking about. It's a lot of money. It's about 4 years of paychecks. That would be the equivalent. So think of what you make in a year, multiply it by 4. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about a talent. A talent was a weight that they put on one end of the scale and then something else on the other, and that's what they did. We're not talking about just skills. We're talking about a unit of measure that was of great value. It's safe to say that we're talking about a guy who is very wealthy, and he trusts these servants, these 3 guys, and he puts them in charge of his stuff, and he goes away on a long journey. And Jesus is making an analogy, of course, and in this story, he's the master. And we, or you, are one of the servants. If you're a Christian, you can plug yourself in, you're one of the servants. And you're in charge of some stuff. These are not for the super religious, this is just for people who follow Jesus, and he's their master. You're in charge of some stuff. God has given you some things, and he knows what you can handle, and that determines the amount that you're given. But the bottom line is you have a responsibility that says each was given according to his own ability. They don't have the same opportunities, they don't have the same skills, but each of us has a big bag of opportunity. You might think of it that way. Just the fact that you live in the United States means you have incredible opportunities. This guy pointed out that there's a lot of third world Christians who live in nations that are not as well off. They have a lot of heart, but not much opportunity. They don't have a lot. They may not even know a lot. But in contrast, you have a lot. and you know a lot. I heard a speaker talking about this. His name was Jason Fritz, and I like how he put it. He says, every time you hear truth from the Bible, you've just received a coin. Every time you've opened the Bible, you've received a coin. And that's not even counting all the other blessings that we have. Add to that all your literal money, your skills, your experiences, all the experiences you've had, your time, all your stuff. You have been given much. When it comes to spiritual opportunities, though, we tend to settle into the idea that we are second-string players. In the back of our minds, when we hear this parable and somebody like me is getting up here talking about this, I think a lot of us think, oh, well, I'm the one-talent guy. There was even a guy, I had a friend who was talking about this. He said, well, I'm the one with no talent. He says, I don't think that's in the parable. But we think, oh, I'm just the one-talent guy, and it's startling to realize that alone is a lot. If somebody handed you this in silver or gold, that's a pretty good day. You probably would be financially benefited. Oh, poor you, only 75 pounds of silver. We're talking about one talent is a lot to have. And we fall into this trap where we focus on what we don't have. We focus on what we can't do. It's the same old story, but if I won the lottery, I'd be able to do this. Or if I did this, conditional, if I could just be this person, then I'd be this person for God. But we don't realize what we already have. And so we focus on what we don't have. We focus on what we can't do, and we're paralyzed. We don't do much. We all know a lot, and we have a lot, and we're capable of a lot. And that makes us responsible to do something with all of it. We're going to be held accountable. What did you do with what you had? That's what the master's question is when he returns. What I gave you, what did you do with it? So you'll notice the first two guys got busy right away. You'll notice the word maybe immediately. I mean, they're watching his car drive away, so to speak, and they're like, okay, let's get busy. The master returns. The one who had 5 talents, now there's 5 more. His master says, good job. The one who had 2 talents says, now there's 2 more. The master says, good job. And even though they had different amounts, the master is equally pleased with them. Our Father knows what we can do, and his expectations match your opportunity. He's not expecting anything unrealistic. And then you get to the guy with the 1 talent. He's the one that sticks in our minds, I think. He hid the money. So I got to say this. If you're kind of trying to defend him and say, well, he didn't throw it away. He didn't squander it. It wasn't like a prodigal son or anything like that. He protected it. He kept it the same. His master gave him something of value. He had it, and he kept it, didn't let anything bad happen to it. And he thought that would be good. And when his master comes back, he says, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. That word is scleros. That's where we get the word sclerosis. That's where it means a hardening of the tissue. It's not a compliment. It's the opposite of gentle. He's saying, Master, I knew that you're not this gentle person. I know you're a hard man. You're a hard person. This guy doesn't know his master at all. Here he is. He's trusted him with a huge part of his possessions. There's no real reason for him to be afraid. The master has demonstrated trust. He wasn't a hard man. He was generous. He gave this guy 75 pounds of wealth. At one point or another, all of us are like this guy. We don't realize what we've got, of course. I think that's part of what hits me. And then we take it for granted, and so we don't feel any motivation to do anything with it. But the truth about the 1 talent man is kind of hard to take. What he's doing when his master comes back is he's setting up an excuse. He says, I knew you were a pretty tough guy, and I was afraid. Here's what you gave me. Here you go. Undamaged, intact, I protected it. The master pushes past all those excuses, and he gets to the truth of it all, and he says, it's not because you're afraid. You're lazy. So let's talk about the truth here. He says, you're lazy. You'll notice that word's there. The sin here wasn't because he was insecure. It wasn't, it was because he was selfish. He was ungrateful, and boy, this steps all over me. The master calls him on it. He says, the problem isn't your perspective of me. Your real problem is that you're just flat out lazy. He gave them something incredibly valuable. He says, I gave you this wealth. I entrusted you with privilege and responsibility, and you did the worst thing of all, nothing. The issue is not what you believe about me. You wasted what I entrusted to you because you're lazy. That's what he's saying to this guy. Now, if you took a bird's eye view of our lives, somehow able to kind of look over our tomorrow, just tomorrow, I'm sure it's going to be pretty busy for a lot of us. The average life in the United States, we don't seem lazy. We seem wildly busy. Here to there, to here to there, to here to there. Busy, busy, busy. We're very busy. But it's tricky to spot, buried in all our busyness is laziness. I bet you we could honestly appraise ourselves and say, yeah, a lot of times it's just a smokescreen for a lot of empty activity. We're very busy doing world stuff, very distracted by world stuff. But when it comes to Christianity, I think this is where it hits me right between the eyes. I just maintain. I protect it. I'm not losing it. I've got it. I keep it together and hide it. We protect and we defend it, but we don't do anything with it. It's like we talked about before. What do you do as a Christian? Well, I got a big list of stuff I don't do because I'm a Christian. And the irony here is that we're so busy being distracted by all the things God gave us, we don't have any real time for Him. The last verse should get our attention. Matthew 25:30. This guy who ran out of time, remember that's the whole issue. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That gnashing of teeth always kind of confused me. I've heard this explained more than once, but it's basically where you grit your teeth in frustration or anger. It's the agony of a lost opportunity. It's like, oh, it's that on a very, very deep level. I blew it. This parable is not teaching, of course, that the more we do, the more we're saved. That's not even on the table here. It's teaching that you've been saved. If you're a Christian, you've been baptized, you've been saved, you have this huge advantage, a position of privilege. And the question before us is, what are you going to do about it? Romans 12:6 touches on this. Here's Romans 12:6. This fits, I think, really well with this parable of all the things we've been given. Romans 12:6, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly. Do something with them. If prophecy, in other words, delivering knowledge according to the proportion of his faith, if service in his serving, or he who teaches in his teaching, or he who exhorts, encourages people in his exhortation. He who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. The bottom line is we do something. Someday, I'm going to stand before God and I'm going to face the moment of accountability. Like we were talking about in class, Jesus provides that holiness and blamelessness that we can have only with Jesus. But it's an interesting question. I was a Christian during this life. What did I do with it? I protected it. Wrong answer. Don't tell me what you didn't do. Tell me what you did. We need to feel the weight of responsibility as we live our lives. Things, of course, the way that we live our lives, it shouldn't get worse, but it sure shouldn't stay the same either. In fact, I would argue that if it does stay the same, then it's just going to get worse. I found this very interesting. There was a survey of Americans several years ago asking them, what do you regret most in life? As far as those regrets that kind of haunt you, what do you regret most in life? And as they were talking to people and interviewing them, they noticed a pattern. When people look back over short periods of time, like a few days or a week ago, they had regret about doing certain things. The extra piece of pie, saying something they shouldn't have. But here's what's interesting. When people look back over long periods of time, thinking over the past years, the regret was different. It wasn't about what they did, it was about what they didn't do. The missed opportunities. Here's what you need to know. I hope this is encouraging. No one has ever done everything they've set out to do. I know I've met people who pretend like they have, and they're very annoying, but that nobody ever sets out to do everything and pulls it off. Nobody pulls it off. No one has ever lived a life without regrets. So don't think that you're the only one. There was one guy who did, I should say, and he's the one who can remake your life and help you get past regrets, because none of us have done well. That's why we need his help. But he'll help you get past the regrets and do something with the rest of your life. But it has to be a life that does something. Today, just today, it says that today's the day the Lord has made. It's a treasure in your hands. What are you going to do with it? This is a great start, being with Christians, but what are you going to do after this? Like we're talking about in class, is it going to affect your choices the rest of the day? Or the rest of the week, or the rest of your life? What's the plan for the week? What are you going to do with what God has given you? You can't just protect it. The real issue is always before us. It's not about what you're not going to do. The real question is this: what are you going to do? Hope this is encouraging to you as we stand together and sing.